Get started. I think it's 2 o'clock. And so welcome to the Planning Committee East on Tuesday the 3rd at 2 o'clock. So I've got to read out some information here for everybody as usual, and also remind people to declare any interests, etc. So here we go. Do we have any apologies? No, I'll do this first. This is the chair's announcements for hybrid planning committees, which we read out every month. So bear with me, please. Welcome everyone to the meeting. This meeting is taking place in the council chamber at Shepton Mallet, and we have members of the planning committee, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, then please let me know now. No, everybody seems okay. Members who have brought their own devices with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off, and very importantly, their device or microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, this causes feedback on the council sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It is not permitted for any other member of the public viewing on by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch the attention of myself, the vice chair, Edric, or lead officers, Anna and Simon, and also Leslie, our legal officer. When members in the chamber speak, remember to switch on your desk microphone so that all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. Please can all mobile phones be set to silent? And there we are. And so we'll now move to apologies, which I think, Helen, that's with you.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So we've got apologies from Councillor Helen Kay, who is on a extended leave of absence, and Councillor Michael Dunk is her sub this month. And Councillor Adam Boyden has sent apologies, and Councillor Simon Carswell is his sub. Thank you, that's all.
Lovely, thank you. Next, we're going to go to the minutes of the previous meeting, which I will read out, or I won't read out, I'll read the pages out and people can raise their hands. I believe that we have something in the first, hold on, let's just make sure I've got it. It's page 15 so that you know where to start. And I believe we have on, Simon, I'm coming back to you as an officer. Yeah. We need something to be clarified, don't we, on the first page? Is it the first page?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just obviously the application that was land south of Fossfield Road under 2022-0614 OUT. So there's a procedural point. I think Councillor Robbins and Councillor Hobbs can't vote for that part of the minute because they stepped outside of the meeting. So I don't know how you're going to deal with that. It might be that when you and Councillor Robbins come to vote, you're voting and you just confirm that you're not voting with regards to that agenda item. And then obviously, as with all the applications, Chair, the reason for refusal or the reason for approval is set out, and in particular, members, on that case, because there was quite a lot of debate as to why you weren't going to grant planning permission. Clearly, in voting for the minutes today, you'll be supporting that as your reason for refusal on that application. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Simon. I think that everybody understands what Simon was explaining there. Yep. Okay, lovely. Okay, let's go on then. We'll go through the pages as we are. Page 15. Page 6. Excuse me. Page 16. Page 17. Page 18. Page 19. Page 20. Page 21. Page 22. Page 23. And page 24. Okay. I'm just double checking on something here. Okay, page 25. Page 26. And page 27. And that's it. So I need a proposer, which is Benty, and a seconder, which is Martin. You had his hand up first. So with the exception that we know that Tony and Edric, you won't be voting, is that right?
They just can't vote for, their vote does not cover the
Does
first
not
agenda item.
cover that one. Okay, so we understand that. So, all in favour? All against? No? Okay, that's done. Everybody's happy. Thank you. So next we move on to, I'll get back to there. What's this from the previous meeting? Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest today? No? Okay. Public question time? No. So next we move on to planning application for South Hayes Bristol Road, Stone Easton, Radstock, and I believe you're in charge of this one. Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This agenda item is a retrospective full planning application concerning the residential property of South Hayes off Bristol Road in Stone Easton. The proposal is for the change of use and conversion of the existing garage into a 2-bed holiday let. This aerial photograph shows the application site. It has a countryside location and is bordered to the north and to the south by residential properties. This location plan shows it in greater detail. The host property is semi-detached, and the existing garage subject of this application is in the southeast corner of the site. The current floor plans of the garage and the existing elevations. This plan shows the site with the proposed parking plotted. And here's a photo representation of that. You have the host property here, the existing garage, the access, and the residential garden to the north. These are some photographs taken looking eastwards towards the site, the existing access. The public highway is the Bristol Road. Some further photographs of the interior of the site showing the garage with an outdoor area associated with that and the available parking. And as the report pack says, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
And thank you, Kirsty.
Thank you.
It's succinct. Okay, looking at public speakers, the applicant, we have Natasha Brown, please. And you have 3 minutes, Natasha. Okay.
The garage construction was originally my late husband's project, intended for use as a workshop and garage space. When he died before its completion on the 3rd of August 2021, I managed to complete his contract with planning. The building sat empty for a while, and as my health has deteriorated, I came to recognise the space could serve me more effectively given the changed family circumstances. Knowing I was having major surgery in April of 24, I went on to have the lower ground adapted to be mobility friendly, offering me a place to recover and bathe and ensuring I have an accessible space following further major surgery. My home is our forever home. It is old. The work to widen the doorways and make it wheelchair accessible would be extensive. Having an empty building I can adapt cost effectively was a much easier option as things were time critical. Also, when my mum, who is in a wheelchair, comes over, she was previously confined to the kitchen of the main house, so the adaptations have been worth it, as being able to socialise is important for mental health reasons. The annex has become an invaluable family asset. I submitted this application after consulting with someone from planning at the council in January 24. I wanted to understand my options for the building. I submitted my application for a holiday let permission using an architect as he suggested. I wanted to make practical improvements to the space and give me and my family the use of the space in a flexible way. At the time of submission went in, I invited all my neighbours from both sides of the road where I live to come view and chat with me about the annex. I explained my thoughts about the space and they all wished me well and supported the idea wholeheartedly. I'm hosting students from the Bath Dance College in Radstock. During the week, it is a 2-year contract, term time only. This will bring in vital funds as I can no longer work. Allowing me to utilise this space will give me multiple options on an otherwise little used space. I apologise that I cannot use the building for its intended use as a garage or workshop. I'm trying to make the best of my changed circumstances and make a good thing out of something which has changed our lives forever.
And thank you, Natasha. Cheers. I'm looking and I believe that Edric and Tony are the ward councillors or division councillors. So which of you would like to go first? Tony. Okay, whichever one of you, Edric then.
Hi, it always seems to be me, Tony. You always wondering what I've got to say first. I'd like to ask Kirsty, is the problem the conversion wholesale or is it the fact it's a holiday let? Based on accessibility and needs as stated by the applicant, does it fall foul of everything? If it was going to be classed as an accessible building for somebody who clearly has some special needs around mobility, if the application put in a different way, would that aid you wanting to grant approval? I think that's where I'd like to leave it at the moment. So I'd just like to ask you that one, please.
Thank you. The application at the moment is for retrospective conversion of that building into a holiday let. If it was a conversion into ancillary accommodation, then my recommendation would probably be different. But the proposal in front of me at the moment is for its retrospective conversion as a holiday let, a 2-bed holiday let. And given its location within the open countryside, the principle of it being used as such is not supported by development plan policies. Also, given the constraints of the site, the availability of parking and accessibility, that also is one of my reasons for refusal, because the dual use of the site for both purposes cannot really be sustainably done. And access is quite restrictive, and parking too.
Okay, thanks. So I've got to say, I just want some clarification around, because I've got some other thoughts as maybe you can guess from the way I'm going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Edric. Tony, your 2 pence worth, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly thrown for obvious reasons. I've read all the technical bits that we're required to read. I'm finding it very difficult to go against what the officers have recommended. I really would love to hear my colleagues' views on this before I make a final decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Okay, we open it up to the committee. Who's going to be first to have their say? Benty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask the planning officer if what you just said, that if it had a different application written on it, did you explain that to the applicant? So perhaps the applicant could have put in another application that fitted more in description what we are looking for or what you are looking for, because you decided that it was not good enough.
I'll just to help the committee chair. Obviously, when we receive an application, members, we determine it at face value. So it's not our job role to consider other types of uses, other types of development that may be possible on the site and may generate a different recommendation. So it wouldn't have been Kirsty's role really to have had that conversation with the applicant, because the applicant made a planning application to use the garage building as a holiday let. So that's what it was determined on.
All right, thank you, Simon. Benty, are you happy with that explanation?
Mr. Chairman, quite frankly, no, because I know other applicants that has been not in a similar situation, but where it was withdraw the application and put another one in with another description on, and then it will go through.
Thank you. Who's next? Susie, you wish to say something? Yeah.
It feels like we're being asked to reject this application in line with recommendation on a technicality from what I can hear going on. So could I just ask, if they'd made the application as an ancillary dwelling, would that then preclude them being able to occasionally rent it, as the lady suggested, they are currently, to students from a dance school? Thank you.
So the application is for a holiday let, a commercial use. It's not a residential use in terms of it just being for family and friends. The fact that people are coming in there, they're paying to use the facilities, means that it's commercial. If the application had been for an ancillary accommodation use just for friends and family, then my recommendation might have been different.
I understand that, but had they made an application in that way, would that preclude them ever being able to rent it out, as she currently suggests, the lady currently suggests she is occasionally doing to students? That's the question.
Yes.
It would preclude it?
Yes, because it's a commercial use.
Okay, no. So I didn't realise that she couldn't have it as an ancillary dwelling and then occasionally rent it out. So had they made a different kind of application, they wouldn't be able to rent it out at all.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for clarification.
Okay, thank you, Susie. Thank you, Kirsty. Mick, I think you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Well, yes, I think that's the problem, really. If the intention of the applicant is to rent it out, then I think I'm inclined to go with the officer recommendation, because although it may look like a technicality, it is a different use, and I can see why that she says that the access is and suitability for parking and the location is not ideal from that point of view. So I think I'm minded to go with the officer on this one.
Okay, thank you, Mick, for your opinion. Susie, you wish to come back?
Yeah, I'm just slightly confused by the whole thing. So had they made an application in a different way as an ancillary dwelling and they were given that permission and it all went through, how would then occasionally renting it out be any different than someone doing bed and breakfast in their house, which anyone can do as far as I'm aware?
Who wants to answer that one? Simon?
Yeah, Chair, I'll just explain what Kirsty's already outlined to the members. So, as you can see from the report pack, members, there's not a problem with the building. The building was granted consent, and you've talked about if it was occupied as an ancillary dwelling. Technically, it would be occupied as ancillary accommodation. So, if it's occupied in the same way that you might build an extension to your property that adjoins your property, then there's not a problem with that. And you're right. If you occasionally, let a room out in your house, then that's not considered to be a breach of planning control, as long as the use of the property stays as a house. I think what you've heard from the applicant, and she's been very honest. She's told you that she's renting it out to students who are a further education establishment, for an 11-week basis. So that's quite different to renting a room in your house to a friend who's going to live in with you in your house for a period of time. So I think there is
just to reply, I would say that is having 3 children who are either students or recently stopped being students. I would say that's a pretty grey area, because university today isn't what it was when old people like me went to university, and it seems to be pretty ad hoc and they're not there all the time. So anyway, I mean, but I was just asking out of, just trying to bottom out how we can help them achieve what they're trying to achieve, because ultimately we were told at great length in a review that refusals are failures. So I don't want us to fail.
Okay. Thank you, Susie. Simon, do you have anything? Do you have anything else you wish to say to answer?
I mean, I think you've had some debate, members. Councillor Dunk has actually indicated he'd support the officer recommendation. In terms of your job role, if you go through the report, what Kirsty's set out is effectively her view on balance. So, in her opinion, she's assessed the application proposal to use it as a holiday let against your policies in the development plan. Your policies say, so do government's policies, that we should be supporting sustainable development because of the location. We're telling you we don't think it's a sustainable location for this type of use, and therefore, when we're weighing in the balance, the impact of the use against the benefits, we don't think the benefits outweigh the harms.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Yes, you can come back one more time on this one, Susie.
I just wonder if, rather than refuse permission, we might consider a deferral, during which period they might reconsider how they make the application. It's just a suggestion.
Okay, thanks for that. Edric, you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry to butt in. If that's a proposal from Susie, if we are allowed to defer pending coming back with the application in a different format, I would second that proposal.
I'm happy for that to be a proposal. It was a question, but I'm more than happy for it to be a proposal.
I'll be happy to second that.
Okay, thanks. I've spotted you, Dawn, but I've got 2 others first. Rob is first.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it seems quite clear. The planning officer has said quite clearly it's unsuitable for bed and breakfast. So I think that's where we are. I was going to say, well, in that case, we've got to refuse it and ask for another application for ancillary accommodation to come in. I don't know if that would be the best way, or as has just been proposed, to defer it. I wait for advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Simon, did you look like you want to say something?
Members, because you've got an application for specific use, you can't defer making a decision and hope that the applicant resubmits it for another use, that they can't do that. But we've talked about using the garage for ancillary accommodation to the host house, and effectively that is its lawful use. So if the applicant wanted to use it as overspill accommodation to the host house, there isn't a problem with that, and there actually probably wouldn't be a need to gain a separate approval for that.
All right, so we don't. So if we refuse as it is, it can just carry on being used as the ancillary accommodation, which renders Susie and mine's proposals needless and meaningless. Then, put it bluntly,
it does, Chair. And again, as I've said, that the applicant's made an application for specific use. So what you've really got to do is make a decision on that application. If you vote in accordance with the officer recommendation, then the applicant has got obviously a decision that the local planning authority don't consider that use to be acceptable, and she will be able to reconsider options how she then wishes to use it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Simon. I think we understand what is going on. I think next, Martin, you're next.
I think it's been very helpful and has probably made my mind up. Thanks, Simon. Obviously, the applicant, she can live in the dwelling. She could have a lodger in that dwelling, and therefore, if we refuse this particular application, it doesn't forbid her from carrying on in that way. So, I think we probably that is not the same as the proposal that's been put in front of us. And in that respect, then I suggest we refuse.
Chairman, if I can, I think what we've got to be very, very careful at this meeting is not to say what she can or what she can't do. Obviously, the lawful use of the garage is as a domestic garage, and it's within the curtilage of a residential property, and there's no issue with regards to it providing overspill accommodation for the host property. But to say that it could then be let out to a lodger, I think that's probably not what we should be saying in this meeting, because I think that does tip it outside of an ancillary use. So I think focus today, make a decision on whether or not you think it's acceptable for the garage to be used as a holiday let. If you do, obviously she will walk away with the permission. If you don't, then there'll then be conversations, and we'll be quite happy to talk to her about what the current lawful use of the property is perceived as, and we can advise and guide if how she wishes to use it would sit within that lawful use parameter.
Thank you, Simon. That sounds interesting. Okay, Dawn.
No, I think everything's been covered. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Do we have a proposal? Yeah. You want to speak, Claire?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This is difficult, actually, isn't it? Because it's difficult to go against what the officer is recommending, but at the same time, the recommendations of refusal are because of the harms outweighing the benefits, and sustainability has been spoken about. At the same time, we're humans, and we've heard a honest applicant talk about their bereavement, their circumstances, and trying to survive. And we all know how difficult it is at the moment. Cost of living pressures on people. But so we're in a difficult position because it's that issue of harms. And I just wondered if the officer would briefly just summarise the harms, what these harms are, because just quick comment before you say that is the business model, but with the students, that obviously the example we've been given, it's different to potentially, it's not quite the Airbnb that we all envisage. This is a regular contract, which the applicant mentioned, over a 2-year period. They're not bringing loads of cars and things like that. I know it's not one rule for one scenario, but I just want to hear the harms again, please, from the officer. Thank you.
Okay, who's going to go with that one, Kirsty?
Well, thank you. It's a very interesting question. So principally, the application site lies lies outside the development boundary, it's got an open countryside location. In assessing this application, it's for a holiday let. So a holiday let can mean many things to many different people, irrespective of whether there's a contract of how it will be occupied. The applicant could then change and invite other people. And with that, whilst there might not be many cars at the moment, its holiday let use will propose people coming and using their cars, visiting the site, and then having to use their cars to purchase bread and milk or use local facilities. So given its location, it won't be sustainable, and the development plan policies are there to not encourage car use or to intensify a residential use where you have harms. So these harms are that it encourages the use of private transport. There's not very many, or there isn't a very well developed system there of public transport. Also, the site itself doesn't lend itself to having adequate parking and turning facilities for a dual use, residential and the potential holiday let. And notwithstanding these constraints is that the holiday let will have on the amenities of neighbouring properties.
I think that's a really good summary, Kirsten. Again, for members, if you look at the report pack, page 35 and 36, we've summarised the 2 reasons for refusal, which basically form our recommendation. So again, if any of the advice that Kirsty has just given you verbally hasn't been clear, if you read the reasons at 1 and 2 on page 35 and 36, hopefully that will just add clarity.
Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Simon. Dawn, you're coming back now, are you? Okay.
Yep. There's so much that I think is a good thing about this application, and I think that there's way more benefits in a lot of ways. It gives an income, and also it's clearly worked up till now. I've often had an issue with retrospective planning applications, but I think, when you're waiting a long time for something to happen, it takes, there's only so many years in our lives, and you kind of think, God, I just want to get on with it. I think it's also just supporting local economy, but also giving an income to somebody, which I think is really quite valuable. I also think that if we go with the officer recommendation, I believe that there are other ways that you could make this happen. The applicant could make this happen for her. I just think that maybe the holiday let, as we've spoken, is quite a restrictive, and it has criteria that have to be abided by, whereas there are other options that a resident could use to generate an income from their property. And maybe those are other things to explore. But from a planning perspective, I think maybe it isn't the right place for, or the right scope, the word, the phrasing, the holiday let might be the issue. So I think, and as Claire said, it's a tricky one, because you really want to support, and if it's worked so far and it's generating an income for somebody, then I think it's something that we should consider the benefits above the harms. But Claire's got something to come back on.
Thank you, Dawn. Claire?
Could I just ask another question of where because it comes down to sustainability around the highways, the cars. I do actually, it does remind me of the opposite argument for when we've wanted to refuse some other planning applications that have been in rural areas like Butley and things like that, and it was completely used in reverse. But so I think what Councillor Denton has sort of reinforced in my mind is the benefits of the application, because we're considering harms versus benefits. So could you just point to me from the highways perspective where they're saying about the harms with the evidence on the car parking, please, just so I can get my mind understanding these harms a little bit better, please, because I'm just going into the report from highways and I'm not seeing it at the moment.
So when we have an application, obviously highways are consulted, and their response was for the application to comply with standing advice, which is a set of guidelines for applications where you may have a commercial or an additional residential use. It has ideal numbers of parking areas and so forth. So when it comes to this application, the site is going to be proposed for two uses, one being residential, one being commercial. And as part of the application, it was determined that they would propose 2 parking spaces for the 2-bed holiday let. And then obviously you'd have to have parking for the house, visitors, family coming to view it. When I carried out the site visit, it was clear that the area of parking for the holiday let was very small. In the area of parking, you had the garage, but you also had an outdoor area and a jacuzzi, and there wasn't really much room for manoeuvre when it came to cars being able to access the site for the holiday let, together with those accessing the site for the residential use. There just clearly wasn't enough parking or insufficient space for both uses to be able to be used at that site without impacting the users of the highway adjacent.
Sorry, can I come back, please, Chair? What I'm asking is, where is the actual? Because there's a report logged saying highways consultee comment, but it looks like just the letter you've sent them to send the comment. Forgive me if I've got that wrong, but I want to see where their actual comment is. I know you're saying you're following guidelines, but did they not comment directly?
So highways stated standing advice applies. So what happens there is it's up to the planning officer to look at their guidance in terms of their ideal in terms of spacing, access, width, and their guidelines with developments and making sure that there is no impact or it's not a sufficient unacceptable impact on the users of highways. And that's not just only users of the public highway, it's pedestrians and so forth.
Thank you. So they didn't comment, you're just using the reference of what the guidelines, they haven't. So I just want to make colleagues aware that highways have not commented on this plan application.
Highways have commented, they were consulted, and their advice was standing advice applies. They were consulted, and that was what they determined was sufficient in this example.
Sorry, do you mind just putting the picture?
Thank you. So you've got to go through me. You can speak now.
Yeah, please, would you mind just putting the picture up again? Thank you. Of the kind of parking area, yeah.
Yeah, if I can, whilst members just look at the photographs, what you've got to be confident of, members, is that the dual use of the site, so the residential use and the commercial use, can accommodate the vehicular movements in a safe manner. So again, I think if you look at the photographs there, you'll see the access arrangements from the highway onto the site, and then Kirsty's got a photograph which shows you the capacity of the site to accommodate the car parking. So you've got to be confident that with the visibility display that is provided with those houses either side of the entrance, that effectively 2 vehicles could make that movement, because again, you can't guarantee that they can be managed properly because you've got 2 uses on the site. So that's the concern that we have as officers. Just to help you, and again, Councillor Sully's correct in terms of what she's advised you. It's a fairly standard practice on small applications that the Highway Authority don't provide a specific comment, and as Kirsty says, they refer to standing advice. And then what we have to do as the planning officers is interpret whether or not the proposal meets that standing advice. So what we've got here and what we had to think about was the visibility display, and it's in particular as vehicles leave the site. So you can see there that the houses that are adjacent to the access are fairly tight to the highway. So you've got to imagine that, is there enough room there for two vehicles to be accessing, leaving the highway at the same time in a safe manner? Our view, based on Kirsty's site visit, is, and as you can see there from the photographs, is that that will be problematic, which is why we've identified it as a harm.
Okay, thank you for that, Simon. Benty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will propose that we follow the recommendation of the officer, and then that the applicant can come back to planning and get the help she requires for her to have a future life that she can be happy with as well. But I now propose that we follow the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Benty. Is there anybody willing to second Benty? Simon. Okay, thank you. Okay, we've had quite a long discussion on this one, and I think we're getting to we've got to come to the vote at some stage. But Edric, you had one in there, or you had a proposal in?
I was going to say, we still have Susie's proposal, seconded by me. I think, in light of what Simon said, I will withdraw my backing to your proposal because I don't think it fits the purpose anymore. So I'm withdrawing my seconding because it doesn't seem that it's relevant at all now.
Right, thank you, Edric. Susie, do you wish to withdraw?
Yeah, because it sounds like you said it wasn't really technically a thing that we could do.
Okay,
So,
that's
yeah,
fine.
I withdraw it, sorry. However, I think you'd have to be driving with your eyes shut to not be able to drive in and out of there. I think there's plenty of space for a number of cars there, and I think we should just let them get on with their lives, actually. There we go.
Okay, thanks, Susie. Mick, you wish to contribute?
Just only to mention, really, I think that I'm not sure, perhaps the officer can answer this one, but I think the idea is that you have a turning circle that you can, if you drive in a forwards way, you don't have to reverse out onto a road. And I think that's possibly the other contributory factor, that there may not be enough turning space provided if you get the maximum number of cars that could turn up. And that's possibly, I don't know if that's the case, but that's possibly a contributory factor as well.
Okay, thank you, Mick. But I think that we're going to go to a vote now. Benty, yours. Oh, somebody else wants to come in. Martin.
All I wanted is clarification of the proposal, please, Chair. Because is it just simply to go with officer's recommendation? If it's that, I have support. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe that also Benty wanted a recommendation that the person.
Yes, yes, but I would assume that the applicant will take contact with the planning, and if not, the planning officer might just send a line and say, here we are, now we are quite happy to help. And also, I will say that no help and no changes comes without it cost money. Thank you.
Thank you, Benty. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Okay. So, I'm just trying to work this one through in my mind a moment. Are we going to do this one as the original, whether we go with the officer recommendation and that way? Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Chair,
So,
yes, that's the only proposal on the table.
yeah.
The proposed alternative proposal having been having the seconder withdrawn and the proposal withdrawn. So the only recommendation on the table is the one on the papers.
Okay, thank you. Right, let's go for the vote. All those in favour of going with the officer recommendation? Okay. You got them? Okay, no. And all those against? 4. And, excuse me, any abstentions? No. Okay. So it's carried with the officer's recommendation. We go with that one. Thank you. Hang on. I've just got to make this thing work again. No, I don't need to. Oh, well, Edric's popped out for a second, so we'll hold on a moment. Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Okay, right, then we will move on again to agenda item 6, which I believe is Kirsty again, and this is for 95 Wookey Hole Road in Wells. Thank you. So if you'd like to fire away, Kirsty.
Thank you, Chair. So this next agenda item is also mine. This is a householder application concerning 95 Wookey Hole Road in Northern Wales. The proposal is for the construction of a single-storey pitched roof extension to the rear elevation of the property and installation of heating and cooling pump. So as you can see from this aerial photo, the application site lies within a residential area. It is a detached building, dwelling, and benefits from having a long linear-shaped garden. This slide shows the application site in greater detail. 95 Wookey Hole Road is bounded to the east and west by large detached residential properties. The location plan also shows the proposed development, which is here to the rear. This just shows the floor area in greater detail. This is the existing site, and this is the proposed. The proposed elevations of the extension, together with the roof plan. It can also be seen that there is an area of timber decking, some railings, and a privacy timber screen to the east. So these are the photographs. So this photograph was taken at the front of the property of 93, so the adjacent property, looking directly at the application site. This is a photograph standing at the rear elevation of the applicant's dwelling house, looking towards the shared boundary with 93. So this is a photograph looking from the interior of the garden at the shared boundary with 93 Wookey Hole Road. It is noted that there are no windows on the adjacent property. Again, this is from 93, just looking at the existing boundary detail. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, Simon, if you want to add a bit more.
Yeah.
Shows the next photograph from the rear garden. So members, what you're being faced to consider is an extension to the application site, which is very similar to the neighbouring property. And if Kirsty goes to the block layout plan, you'll see on the right there that effectively the depth of the extension that's proposed is the same as the neighbouring property. So hopefully that'll give you a bit more of an insight into what's proposed and how it sits in its context.
Okay, thank you for the added information, Simon, and thank you, Kirsty. I'm looking, I don't believe that we have a Wells Division councillor on this group. So we will go on to, where are we to? I'm sure we have a, yeah, Mr. Oliver Goulden, please. And you have 3 minutes, Oliver, okay? Thank you.
Hello, I'm acting on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Windsor, who engaged us to design an extension to meet their exacting needs for their family. The existing property is a single-storey, two-bedroom detached bungalow set off Wookey Hole Road with a large driveway and ample parking to support an additional bedroom for this dwelling. I'd like to outline some of the aspects which have been fully considered. The extension is not going further than the built line for properties number 93 and 91, which have previously been extended. The extension is inset to each side from the existing dwelling, allowing for maintenance access and the proposed extension and the boundaries. The material finishes are to match the existing dwelling. The extension includes for 3 windows on the eastern elevation facing number 93. As this is a single-storey dwelling, the head of the windows is set to the underside of the soffits. It is to be noted that the committee that the boundary wall between the property and neighbouring number 93 is both of timber fence and concrete block wall. The concrete block wall starts 2 metres prior to the extension and runs at 2.1, rising up to 2.4 metres. This is already higher than the existing soffit and head of the proposed windows, one of which will be obscure glass. This was my justification for adding the windows to the eastern elevation, as the existing concrete block wall cancels out any possibility of overlooking these windows over number 93. The windows are merely serving the purpose of natural light and ventilation to the bedroom and WC. The balcony area to the south elevation has slatted timber screens to both the east and western side to save potential overlooking or loss of privacy with direct neighbours. Overall, the single-storey extension is in line with the surrounding. The scale and the size and development remains single-storey and does not go beyond the built line of other properties, and ensures privacy is maintained for the neighbours and the clients. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Golden. That's very good. Okay, now, as we have no representation from the district or the ward councillors, I should say. Do we call them division or ward?
Division.
Division, isn't it? Yeah. So we don't have any of those. I've got no letters to read out from them. So we can assume from that what we wish. Okay, so I'm going to go straight to all of you. And who's going to be the first one to open the debate? Mick.
Someone's got to go first. I'd already noticed actually up on Google Earth that the house at 91 has got exactly the same size extension as the proposed extension, which actually is slightly larger than 93, but does not project past their neighbour 93, so is level with their extension. The houses are slightly set back, and that's why that happens. But the one at 91 does rather set a precedent in that they have obviously got planning permission for that, one hopes, and that's been approved already. So it does look like it fits in with some of the direct neighbours, and if that's a reason to approve, there must be other reasons which the officer might be able to tell us, but that's my understanding at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Was that a direct question to the officer?
It might be worth hearing from the officer.
Okay, I think it was pretty pointed out on our report, but yeah, that's okay, Kirsty. If you or Simon.
Yeah, just Councillor Dunk. I mean, your analysis is spot on in terms of the relationship with the neighbouring property. Just need to be careful that we don't use precedent as a reason for recommending approval for another application. Ultimately, what you have to do is judge whether or not the proposal, in essence, is comfortable with its neighbours. Will it result in any overlooking? Will it result in any overshadowing? Will it result in the creation of an oppressive environment? You've obviously seen Kirsty's recommendation in the report pack. She doesn't think it does. She showed you the photos, which I think are quite helpful for you to make that decision yourself. I don't know if you've got anything else to add, Kirsty.
No, I think you said it pretty much.
Right, thank you both. Mick, I hope that answered your question. Susie?
It seems to me that this has come before us because apparently Wells Council aren't in agreement with officer recommendation. However, it would appear that we have nothing from them here. So I would propose that we just go ahead and go with officer recommendation to allow this development.
Thank you, Susie. Edric?
I'm probably going to be marching to this. I second that. I've just read the report pack again and again, gone over it. And then like the last one, plenty of room to turn cars around, etc. Not overbearing, doesn't overlook anything. I've not got a problem with this at all. And I'm happy to second the proposal to go with officer recommendation.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? No, it doesn't look so. Okay, we will go to a vote. All those in favour of going with the officer recommendation? I think that's unanimous. Okay, great. So that one is unanimous, and so the houses can be built or whatever. Thank you, the extension. Brilliant. Okay, so we're now moving on to let's just that's an easy one. Okay, we're going to agenda item 7, which is land at Burcott House Farm, Pennybatch Lane, Burcott. I hope most people have taken a good interest in this one. And it's a change of use of land from agricultural to residential, erection of a dwelling. Kelly, you're in charge of this one, so if you would like to give your report, please, and show us what you're thinking, or share what you're thinking.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just loading. Yeah. We're there. Hang on. Okay, well, it's not doing what I want it to do, so let's try again. Do you think I need to rejoin the meeting? How do I minimize? Yeah, I do. Sorry, Chair, the IT's not as fast as me, it seems. Okay, let's begin. So this is Burcott House Farm at Pennybatch Lane, Burcott, and the application is for the erection of a dwelling. You can just about see on the Google Earth image the site there. To the north, you've got the Burcott Inn and the main road, and you travel along a long access drive through a farm complex with many uses down to this isolated piece of land at the bottom there. That's the access routes into the site from the main road, and that's the triangular piece of land in question. The land is outside the settlement limit where the development should be strictly controlled, and it is within the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar risk area, and it's at the rural edge of the existing farm complex. It's also in a special landscape feature at the foot of the Brennell Hill, which is special because of its topography. This particular piece of land is at the bottom of the hill, so appreciated that the house isn't proposed on top of it, but it's seen in the context of the special landscape feature. That's the layout of the dwelling on this triangular piece of land. And this application follows an outline application on the site for a house, which was dismissed at appeal in 2020. And then the applicant tried again for a full application, which was refused for 3 reasons. The principal being outside of the settlement limit, a drainage reason, and lack of phosphate information. They resubmitted again, exactly the same scheme this time, but the phosphate issue has now been addressed, and so has the drainage. That's a footprint of the dwelling and the garage. These are the elevations. And these are some photographs looking down the access track to the triangular piece of land where there's some farm equipment that you can see in the distance. And same sort of views, really. So you will probably hear mention in the debate that there are other residential properties close by. That is true, Chairman, but I just want to make it clear to members that were considered under a different set of circumstances, one being a barn conversion, not a new build, and the other was a new build, but on a previously developed piece of land adjacent, so completely different set of circumstances to what we're looking at today. So, Chairman, as I said before, it's outside the settlement limit, so it's against policy. There's no justification for it in terms of it's not been submitted for a rural worker or anything like that. It's unsustainable, and the harms set out in my report are considered to outweigh the benefits of having a dwelling in the open countryside and the harms of that erosion of the countryside which it would cause. Thank you.
And thank you very much. I'm just looking here. So we've got Councillor Jim Reeves will be the first person to speak, please. If you'll come up, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. St Cuthbert Out approved this application for valid reasons stated in your pack. Inter alia, the dwelling would not be visible and would replace an area of land where various agricultural equipment is stored. There are tracks either side and very little passing traffic would be evident. The site is within walking distance of bus stops and the community shop. Dwelling would contribute to the 5-year housing supply quota, would provide accommodation for a 4th generation family that work on the farm. It is stated that the site is outside the settlement limits and open countryside, but is surrounded on a 240-degree arc by habitations at Summerlees, Pennybatch and Burcott, all within 200 metres, some within 50 metres. In consideration by this committee of the land south of Elm Close in late 2023, comment was made that the Wells Neighbourhood Plan is a material planning consideration. It is assumed that St Cuthbert Out's Neighbourhood Plan has the same status for this application. Our building policy number 8, developments in small settlements and farms, states inter alia that the aim will be to identify potential development opportunities that will sustain the vitality and diversity of village life. Applications for new housing located on a farm should be assessed in a flexible manner to ensure that the farmers and their extended families can remain living on the farm where they work. Reasons for recommending refusal include reference to CP1, CP2 and CP4. Earlier, it stated that the LPA cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, thus these policies cannot be given significant weight. The presumption in favour of sustainable development in paragraph 11D of the NPPF applies. Other relevant NPPF paragraphs are: paragraph 28, planning policies should support economic growth in rural areas to promote a strong rural economy. Local neighbourhood plans should support the sustainable growth and expansion of all types of business and enterprise in rural areas, both through conversion of existing buildings and well-designed new buildings. Paragraph 55, to promote sustainable development in rural areas, housing should be located where it will enhance or maintain the vitality of rural communities. Paragraph 48A, if there is an essential need for a rural worker, including those taking majority control of a farm business, to live permanently at or near their place of work in the countryside. Wookey Parish Council's comments should be ignored. It's claimed to have commented because the access to the site from the B3139 falls within their parish. On that basis, every planning application from Wells should be considered by St Cuthbert Out, as you cannot get in or out of Wells without going through our parish. With a new government desperate for building, the council should be concentrating on major developments in the area, not trying to obstruct sustainable single building proposals which support the rural environment and farming economy. I urge the committee passes this application. Thank you.
And thank you, Jim, for explaining that. Okay, next we have the applicant, I believe, James Lansdowne, please.
I'm looking to get planning approved to build a 4-bedroom family home, including a garage, for myself on land situated on my family's farm. The farm has been in my family since the 1950s, and I work on the farm alongside my dad, making me the 4th generation to farm it. My dad is looking to retire soon due to health reasons, so I will be taking over the full running of the farm. We are an organic beef farm, so we are lower impact on the environment, and soon we'll be starting a new venture where we will be supplying our local pub with beef and looking to expand this in the future to other local businesses. We're a big part of the village and the local community, and the only working farm left in the village. Being able to live on the farm makes my life a lot easier in terms of maintaining the welfare of our livestock, which can need care all hours, as it's not uncommon to be out in the middle of the night calving a cow. As there is no affordable housing available in the village, building our own house is more financially viable for us. The planning officer has recommended refusal due to its location being outside of the development boundary for Wookey, and also states that it's an isolated site. The proposed site is approximately 250 metres from the boundary and still within walking distance of the bus stop, village shop, cafe and pubs. It is not isolated as there is Summerleys Cottage around 60 metres from the site, a barn conversion around 100 metres further up the track, a cluster of houses just the other side of the hedge which forms the Summerleys estate, which has recently been granted planning permission to build a 6-bedroom house and garage that is only 40 metres away from my site and is also similar distance outside of the development boundary as my site. I have lived on the farm all my life and loved growing up there, and would like to be able to continue my family's legacy and see my daughter grow up on the farm and experience the childhood I had. Getting planning approval will secure mine and my family's future to keep our family farm going. We have previously looked into an agricultural tie, but due to a technicality, we would not qualify for this, so that is not an option for us.
Okay, thank you, James. That's very good. Well within the 3 minutes. Okay, now I'm looking here. St Cuthbert Out. I don't think we don't have a member for St Cuthbert Out on here, do we? It's Heather and Roz, and I haven't heard from either, which usually means that they're sort of supportive, to be quite truthful, of the applicant. So we'll go next door. So who's gonna be the first one to kick off our debate, please?
Rob.
Rob, you carry on, mate.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as the applicant was speaking, I wrote down the words agricultural ties. Is that a viable option? And he finished off saying it wasn't. So I just wonder, could we have some clarification on whether it is a viable option and why it technically does not fit in?
Yeah, please, Kelly.
I would just say that the application hasn't been submitted on the basis of agricultural need. And there is a specific policy, as you know, in the development plan that sets criteria for that, including, the need to live there full time, that there's no other dwellings available, financial information, and so on and so forth. That's not been submitted as part of this application. So.
Okay, thank you. I think that leaves us to make our own decisions on that one. Okay, Rob, do you have any other questions? No? Okay, next I'll go to Mick. Well, whichever, you were both there, so just, if you're being chivalrous, Mick, it makes a change, but never mind. Okay, who's going first?
I am, right. Yes, thank you, Chair. It's the interesting thing about the agricultural tie. I wonder if we can get some clarification on that, because there might be some criteria about the size of a dwelling that come under that category. Does anyone have anything to comment on that from the planning department?
Anybody wish to
Chair, yeah,
answer that? Yeah.
Obviously, Kelly's explained to you, well, not only has Kelly explained to you, the applicant in speaking has confirmed that they're not pursuing the proposal as an agricultural workers dwelling. If they were proposing it as an agricultural workers dwelling, we would have assessed it against your policy DP 13, and that sets out a range of criteria that the applicant could have chosen to have complied with. In terms of size, there's no rigid minimum size, and I guess it's fair to say we grant planning permission for rural workers dwellings, broad rule of thumb, up to about 180 square metres. So not, again, in terms of what you've seen, whether or not that would be within that built form envelope, I don't know, but it didn't look untypical to what we've approved as ag workers dwellings.
Okay.
Thank you, Simon. Susie.
I mean, I'm just banging on about the same old thing. I too had agricultural tie written down. Would it be completely unacceptable to ask the applicant, given that they're here and they volunteered the information, why they can't apply for an agricultural tie?
Right, thank you, Susie. Interesting. Dawn.
Thank you. It did say that there was a phosphate issue, the refusal, I think, from the Wookey parish on page 51. What is the phosphate issue on that site? That's been resolved now, Chairman. If members are minded to grant permission for this, then the applicant will upgrade a septic tank and put in a PTP elsewhere on another property nearby. So there will need to be a legal agreement to secure that that goes forward if you approve.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Okay, Dawn, would you come back?
Yeah, just another question. It also said that Natural England was going to be submitting a comment yesterday, or did they submit anything? They haven't. I checked this morning and they haven't. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. That one up. Edric, you wish to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. I know we have to view each application on its merits, but some comments. In terms of being outside settlement development areas of settlements, well, farmers usually are. They're not usually in the middle of villages. They're usually on the edge. We have, over the period of time I've been a part of the planning board, approved quite a lot of agricultural dwellings. We have one every creature couple of years. I know we have to take everything on merits. I'm supportive of this, whether it has an agricultural tie or not. We need to keep people living where they work. We keep getting told about sustainable development. Well, there's nothing more sustainable than living where you work rather than having to travel some distance to work. People always do the heartstring bit. You know, the chap says that he's been in the family since 1950. I understand that. I understand why they try and play on our emotions as well. But I would think it would be important to be there on the farm and to carry on and do what you do for future generations. I don't have a problem with this. I don't think it's unsustainable. I appreciate it's outside the settlement boundary, but as I already said, farmers usually are. There are very few farmers plonked right in the middle of the settlements. I'm happy to propose that we go against officer recommendation, and I'd like to recommend we approve this one.
Thank you, Edric. I'm going to come in and I'm going to make some comments myself, which I rarely do. And as some of you know, I grew up on a farm, and my father was a farmer. And James has pointed out a couple of things. He hasn't put in for the application for the agricultural tie, which I understand why not. But it is really important that you stay in the area to be able to farm. I think this is important because you've seen the amount of farms that have gone out of business over the last 20 years and have been converted into houses for rich people from elsewhere. I know it's not strictly planning, but I just thought I'd say it, and I'm fully in support of this application. And I think it's necessary to keep people on the land and near the land for calving, as I think you pointed out. You've got a pedigree. Is it pedigree Hereford? Did you say? Yeah, and I think it's essential, to be quite truthful with you. Anyway, that's my little bit of saying. Who's next?
Barry first.
Barry.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with everything that Edric has just said. Having driven up there on Saturday, you drive perhaps a third of a mile to the very end of this site, and you think, whatever is wrong with being able to put a house up here? It's on the farm, it's a working farm. The gentleman has said he wants to stay on the farm with his family, future generations, staying where he works. If that's not sustainable, I don't know what is. And the only person that I can see who's got a real beef about this is the people who collect the refuse. Don't want to go up there with their truck because it's too far to drive up and down. So this gentleman will have to take his rubbish bins down to the road and have them collected where it's convenient for other people. And apart from that, that's the only issue that I can see we've got. I would just ask one question. How far outside of the development limit is this site actually?
Right, thanks, Barry. I think Simon wants to come in.
I was just going to say the development limit is to the north of the main road, so the pub side is in, and that the south of the main road is out.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Barry, you want to come back? Yeah.
Yeah, please. I mean, having said the south of the main, 3139 is out. There's one big house currently being built there. Another looks as though it's just been finished. And there's all sorts of things going on up there. This chap's not an exception. He's doing what everybody else is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we were told about this a while ago. I'm just going to ask Barry a question first. Barry, are you going to be the seconder for Edric? Yes, okay, that's all right. That's what I needed to know. Simon?
Yeah, members, just to say, you've obviously debated and discussed the application, and you've highlighted the fact that the applicant is proposing to build a dwelling on his farm or on his family farm. We haven't assessed it on that basis, and from your point of view, whilst you've made reference to it, that shouldn't be a material reason as to why you should go on and approve it contrary to officer recommendation. You'll have seen that Kelly's recommendation, and to be fair to her, it reflects the views of two previous planning inspectors. So it's consistently applying policy. And in the view that she's set out, she's saying that in terms of completing the planning balance, the fact that it's outside of the settlement limit and the harm that it causes in terms of its impact on the landscape character, that in her opinion is sufficient to outweigh the benefits. And those benefits are the provision of one dwelling when we're faced with not being able to deliver 5-year housing land supply. So that's the scope of the benefit that you can consider. You can't consider the component agricultural workers dwelling part of it because it's not being proposed as that.
Rob, you're first.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the big question is, why wasn't the application applied as an agricultural workers need? That is the question, because it clearly is needed. It's on the farm, it's needed. I find that's quite strange. Obviously, if we have permission today, they could build it and sell it tomorrow. That's the problem. I'm inclined to go with the officer at the minute, but you know, that's the big question hanging over this whole thing. Why didn't they apply for agricultural need?
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. I'll ask that question for you, actually, in a different term. Is there a way that we could condition it, if planning permission was granted, that it could not be sold separate from the farm?
Thing is, Chairman, I don't, because it's not been assessed in terms of agricultural need, I don't even know, you know, how much land the farm has, where the farmhouse is even, because there's lots of small resis there and other commercial on that farm. So I can't really say because I don't know what the relationship is because I've not assessed it like that. And in answer to Councillor Reid's question, and I don't want to do the applicant a misservice, and I may have forgotten, but I don't know why it wasn't submitted as an agriculture need. Hand on heart, I can't. If they did tell me, I can't remember. I don't know. Is the answer.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Right, who's
in order? I have Mike, Simon, and Claire.
right?
Mike, Dunk, Simon, and Claire.
Yeah, Mike first, then. Mick.
Thank you, Chair. I personally think it's a very prominent building in the landscape. It's quite large, and from that point of view, I'd wished that what was in front of me wasn't quite so prominent. But I would probably be more inclined to vote for this application if it was an agricultural tie, and I could see that that house was going to be passed down if it continued as a working farm, which obviously none of us can guarantee with farming in the state it's in at the moment, and the fact that farmers are prepared to sell up near to retirement age, and the value of their land is very high. So I understand why farmers do that, in which case this could stop being a farm altogether. But the way I see it at the moment is that I can't really go against the officer decision based on what I see in front of me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mick. I'm going to pop back to Benty because follow the rules. Okay, so I think Simon, you're next.
So you should, Chair. I just wanted to pull you up on something. You did say that by the divisional members not commenting, you were assuming they supported the applicant. You could equally be assumed they're supporting the officers in refusing the application. I'm minded to go along with officer recommendation because it was refused in 2019 where the inspector commented, I am mindful that the location of the site is within a reasonable walking distance of facilities in the village and close to a bus route. However, this proximity alone would not override the fundamental objection development in the open countryside for which there is no proven rural need. And that was from the inspector following refusal and then appeal, and the appeal was dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Yep, you made a good point there about me assuming, because I know the division members usually talk to me if they're unhappy. So that's that one. Right, who was next?
Can we go to Benty, please? I missed it. I'm really sorry. I didn't read your way, Benty.
Okay, Benty. Okay, Benty, your turn.
I just want to say that I can understand that the applicant has not gone through the nightmare of pulling your heart inside out to present all the reasons why you want this here to happen. I did it to help the man I work for, and it was everything, every penny you had in your pocket as well. So I can understand that one wants to stay a little bit private in one's application, although it is for the benefit of animals and for the farming families, etc. I can understand all that, but I also think that it is important that in this case here, the officer's recommendation for refusal is followed. You have got to be able to produce that what you want is needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Benty. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment that I was getting concerned when we start to talk about what we think the motivations are of applicants. And that has come up about whether they're going to do something in the future. And I just wanted to put out there again that we mustn't do that. What we think is basically, isn't it, about what we've got in front of us at the moment. Is that okay? So
no, that's very good.
That swayed people to say, oh, they might sell it in the future. I just don't think that's relevant as thinking what they're going to do.
Really, as a board, we shouldn't be that, or a committee, we shouldn't be that interested in what somebody does in 50 years' time, or something like that. That's beyond it. We're just there to look at the application. So yeah, that's a good point, Claire. Thank you. Who's next? Edric.
I appreciate according to planning policy, it's outside development boundaries. But at the last planning board, Tony and I deliberately sat out of an application site in open countryside for 180 houses, which because of the tilted balance we were being asked to approve. We disagreed, which is why we did declare we were predetermined. Yet somebody wants to build a needed building to be on their farm, and we're being asked to follow policy and go against it. It seems madness. We've got more clout to turn down one building than 180 in open countryside. Although I appreciate that's not material consideration.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to make a comment, or are we going to go to a vote? Susie?
Are we able to go against officer recommendation and give them planning permission only with an agricultural tie if they haven't asked for that, or are we not able to?
Good point. Simon?
Councillor Hart, no, the answer to your question is no. I mean, obviously the applicant is here today. He's heard what you've said. The only other option, if you don't, you could defer making a decision. The applicant can then decide if he wishes. Unlike the other application where I said no, you couldn't submit a revision on this application because effectively it's a dwelling. If they want to submit information so that it can be assessed against your policy DP13, that they could do that, and then we would obviously then either make a recommendation or bring a recommendation back for you to consider. So in terms of the answer to your question, no, we can't impose a condition, but you could defer making a decision. And if they wanted to take the opportunity to submit that information, they could.
So thank you. In that case, could I propose that we do that? That at least gives them the option to come back. Thank you.
You wish us to defer? I'm going to consult with the vice chair here a moment, and because he has one there already. Would you like to change it? Would you like to withdraw yours, or Leslie? Would you like to?
Chair, there is a recommendation. Chair, there's already a recommendation on the table.
That's the reason I'm asking if he would wish to withdraw.
No, I don't. I'm happy to leave it as it is. Thank you.
Okay. So you need a seconder, Susie, don't you?
I'm not allowed to make a proposal. I'm not allowed to have a seconder by the sound of things if there's already a proposal on the table.
No, you are. Yeah, you're allowed to make the proposal. Do you want to make the proposal?
Yes. Okay. So I would propose that we defer this and they have the option then to come back and ask to build the property with an agricultural tie. I would propose that.
I'll second it. Okay. So now we'll go and do some voting. Now I've got to remember how to do this. Which one we do first? Leslie, I'm looking for your advice.
The proposal was for, sorry, Chair, just reading my minutes here. So the first proposal was to, sorry, not much use, is it? To go against the officer recommendation and approve, seconded by Councillor Clark. Is that correct, Barry? Yes.
Okay, we'll do that one first. So that was the one that was proposed by Edric and seconded by Barry. Okay, all those in favour, please raise your hands. No, it's the opposite way.
Approval again. For clarity, my proposal, seconded by Councillor Clark, was to go against officer recommendation and for approval of the plan, seconded by Barry.
Okay, we've had clarification, Benty, you understand now, so let's go back to the vote again. All those in favour of Edric and Barry's recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. All those against? And any abstentions? No abstentions. Okay, so we're now going to move on to Susie's proposal, which I have seconded for her, which is to defer for, how long do you want to defer for, Susie? A couple of months? Okay, to defer for a couple of months for the applicant to speak to the planning authority about resubmitting with a agricultural tie. Okay, do we all understand that one? Right, brilliant. Okay, all those in favour of that?
Ten in favour.
10 in favour. All those against? 1, 2, 2, I think. 2 against. So that motion is carried.
And abstentions.
An abstention, yeah. Barry's abstaining, yeah. Okay, so that one is approved, and we just have to
When it's deferred.
wait or deferred and wait for a couple of months. Okay.
Nick, could we have a comfort break, please, Nick?
We certainly can. Yeah, it's because how many we got? Yeah, no problem. So everybody, yeah, you can have 10 minutes, and then we can be back. No longer than 10 minutes. We don't want to be here all night tonight. Can we all take our seats if we're not there? Come on, Mick.
Mick and I.
I don't want to come out of that. Okay, we're all in place and we're all paying attention. So we're going to move on to agenda item 8, which is 22 Froome Road, Beckington. And I think Jenny's got this one. Yeah, Jennifer. Okay, so fire away.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Okay. Here it's showing. Right, seems to be working. Thank you. As you say, this is for 22 Froome Road, Beckington. There's actually 2 applications on the same wider site, so I'm going to present them separately. This application is for the erection of 1 dwelling and associated works. Okay, so aerial view of the site. The yellow circle is the location of the site itself. The red line is the development limits of Beckington. So as you can see, the site does lie within the development limits. So closer view of the site. Again, so the location plan on the left-hand side, the red line is the site relating to the erection of a single dwelling under this application. The other application, which I'll present separately next after this one, would be within the blue line. So just as a bit of context, it shows the locations of both. The aerial image on the right-hand side, as you can see, the red line is the development limit of Beckington itself. So the site is within that. The purple line is the conservation area. So it does also fall within the conservation area of Beckington. There's also a number of listed buildings close to the application site as well. So existing proposed site plans, existing site plan on the left-hand side. So the proposed site plan it's first glimpse, it's difficult to see, but the dwelling has a green roof. So it's the rectangular shaped dwelling towards the south boundary of the site with an access track off of Froome Road itself, further to the northeast. So there's quite a different in gradients with this site. So these sections go some way to demonstrate this. The top section, if you see my cursor, that's a retaining wall, and the existing dwellings are to the front of this section up here. So the site where the proposed dwelling sits will be below the existing ground levels of the retaining wall. So it'd be set at a lower gradient within this site than the existing dwellings. So the proposed floor and roof plans, the ground floor is where the majority of the living space will be, including 2 bedrooms, and then the first floor is purely limited to just 2 bedrooms, so it's much smaller, and as previously mentioned, is proposed to have a flat green roof. And proposed elevations, front and rear. The top left image is the front elevation, which shows the smaller first story element of the dwelling and then the larger ground floor. And the bottom images of the rear of the property, and the side elevations, including a section drawing on the right hand side. Again, as you can see, it's much lower in height than the existing. I think this is an outbuilding shown here, and the existing dwellings are beyond that, further to the south. So it's much lower than the existing dwellings. Proposed elevations and floor plans of the detached garage. And then moving on to some photos of the site. So as previously mentioned, there's 2 elements to this application, or to the 2 different applications, but this is taken from Froome Road itself, looking back towards the application site. So if you see my cursor on the right hand side, the actual dwelling would be down here behind this retaining wall. This dwelling on the left hand side will be demolished, but that's part of the separate application. However, the access will be coming off of Froome Road, so along this this wall here, and go down the side of the site to reach the proposed dwelling at the bottom. Okay, and these images are again just showing so this one on the right hand side shows the height of the neighbouring dwellings in comparison to the site itself. So you can see there's quite a drop in ground levels. So this is taken from the north, the bottom of the site, looking back up towards Froome Road. So this would be the dwelling that's going to be demolished, and the access will be coming down along this wall here on the left-hand side. This is the retaining wall itself, so the dwelling will be sitting just to the front of this wall, and then the ground slopes down towards a stream at the bottom. So this is looking back the opposite way along that same wall. And some wider views of the site towards the stream at the bottom of the site. Okay, and the recommendation is for approval as per the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you very much, Jennifer. Okay, so we now move on to the public speakers. And the first one is Richard Blackhouse, who I believe is online.
Thank you, Chair. Backhouse, no L in my surname.
Can you make it so we can see your face, please?
I have switched my camera on, Chair.
Thank you. And just turn it off when you finish your 3 minutes. Cheers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not opposed to a development of the site on which this proposal is situated. But I do object to this proposal because I believe it infringes our right to privacy and therefore should not be permitted development. Let me give the committee a sketch of the site. Your map misleadingly cuts my garden in two. There is no barrier just to the left of the word issues as suggested by the map. My garden runs along the site of the proposed development to the right and above the red outline on your map. The site for development slopes down to the northwest until it reaches a garden wall between the properties, and my garden slopes up on the other side of the little valley that these slopes form. The proposed house sits on the highest part of its site. The floor of the house, on the ground floor, is above the top of the garden wall which separates our gardens. The view into my garden not shown by the officer's photos is completely unimpeded by this wall. The proposed development literally looks down on us. The proposed house is built as a long, thin structure, and it's oriented so the vast majority of the windows face one way, into our garden. I estimate that around 90% of the glazing faces our garden from the elevated position. And all of those windows are from floor to ceiling, including in the kitchen, family room, living room, and patio area. The proposed property does not only overlook my garden from its principal bedrooms, it overlooks it from all the rooms which will be occupied during the day. Without visiting my garden, the planning officer gives the opinion in her report that the affected area is of lower amenity. That view is expressed on the basis of no evidence having made a visit to our garden, and I urge the committee formally to set it aside. In the part of my garden the officer prefers, part of that is 17 feet wide in parts, and it's overlooked by numbers 16, 18A and 20 Froome Road. So the proposed development would blight the very best bit of my garden by taking away our privacy. And I can assure the committee that this part of our garden is not currently affected by small upstairs windows in houses more than 200 feet away, contrary to the officer's report. Lastly, the planning officer proposes that the development is screened by planting, if the application is granted. If this planting is not of a limited height, the only south-facing aperture in the line of trees on my garden will be closed, and we will stand to lose the sunlight from a significant fraction of our garden. I suggest that my rights to light will be infringed. Any such screening must be of limited final height. Thank you for the consideration of the Planning Committee. I would be grateful if you rejected the application.
Thank you very much. And if you could turn your... Oh, you've done it. Well done. Okay, next we go on to the Parish Councillor, which is Mr. Rory Inglety Mackenzie. And you have 3 minutes as well, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing this to be taken at the committee level. The site in question is in the Beckington Conservation Area and meets the boundary along the site's northwest extent. Existing historic houses running northeast from the site towards the centre of Beckington were built along the road with no buildings to the rear. The proposed house would therefore compromise the one house deep character of the Froome Road. There are a number of neighbouring listed buildings that will be impacted by the proposed development. Numbers 20, 24, 26 Froome Road, the Haven and the Baptist Chapel, which are all Grade 2 listed, and the Abbey opposite, which is Grade 2 starred. The modern style of the proposed building would be inappropriate within the conservation area. It would be as long as the whole Georgian terrace of 3 separate dwellings that it will sit below. Residents of the proposed dwelling would overlook the garden of number 18, Froome Road, which wraps around the long northern side of the proposed building, thus taking away their privacy and enjoyment. The garden of number 18 lies 1.8 metres below the patio of the proposed new build, which extends along the length of the new house, fully exposing the garden to those on the patio. In revision to the plan, the architect has reduced the size of the first floor. However, 3 large first floor windows remain, together with the large sliding doors and windows on the ground floor, all overlooking the garden of number 18 below. The proposed development will take up a large part of the plot and will impact on wildlife. Despite a proposed buffer zone, much land in the plans is given over to grass. Studies show that the lost wild green area is a haven for wildlife and a proven habitat for grass snakes, slow worms, adders, and other amphibians. Whilst mitigation measures are proposed, the ecological balance will surely be impacted. As part of a previous planning application withdrawn, a Habitats Regulations Appropriate Assessment concluded that the then proposed development of the site was likely to have an adverse effect on the integrity of the Greater Horseshoe Bat feature of the Mells Valley SAC. A local amateur bat monitor confirms that more bat activity has been detected across the proposed site than that included within the bat survey report commissioned and included by the current owner and developer. Horseshoe bats have regularly been seen along the southern boundary and current garden of 22 Froome Road, as well as serotines, noctules and pipistrelles. The application allows for garaging and parking of 4 vehicles on site. Together with the garaging and parking arising from the applicant's application for 2 semi-detached houses on the same site, which you'll hear later, this would potentially result in up to 10 vehicles using the access onto Froome Road in place of the current 1 or 2. At school run times, parents park alongside Froome Road and in the adjacent lay-by, creating parking congestion whilst children are taken to and from Springmead School. The proposed development will inevitably compromise the integrity of the conservation area and introduces a second echelon of housing behind the Froome Road frontage. The modern design is out of place with the neighbouring listed properties and will significantly impinge on the privacy of the garden of number 18. It will very likely adversely impact the local ecology and it will increase traffic on this already busy stretch of the Froome Road. Beckington Parish Council respectively urges the Planning Committee to refuse this application.
Thank you very much, and that's great. Next we have Tessa Hampton. A welcome return, even if they're on the other side of the fence at the moment. Right, you have 3 minutes, Tessa.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my name is Tessa Hampton and I'm representing the applicant, Mr. Damien Kelly. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and to the Case Office for a comprehensive report which recommends approval. The site is within the development boundary of Beckington. Beckington benefits from facilities including a school, doctor's surgery, pub and cafe. It is a highly sustainable location where new housing is not only supported by policy but should be given significant weight, particularly in an area with a lack of 5-year land supply. As you'll have seen, the application site sits within the rear and side garden of 22 Froome Road. The design and scale of the dwelling has been amended during the application process in response to officers' comments. It is now not visible from the public realm. The discrete nature and location of the site offers the opportunity to deliver a high-quality contemporary dwelling. Whilst contemporary, it utilises local materials to ensure it takes cues from the local vernacular. The siting of the building behind the primary building line does not conflict with any strong building grain, and there are other examples in the village where buildings are set behind the main roads. This is natural as the village grows organically over time. Development in an existing garden with a further garden to the north does not represent encroachment into the countryside. A tall boundary wall separates the site from the adjacent listed buildings, and due to this and the appropriate scale proposed, the setting of the listed building is not compromised by the development. The character and appearance of the conservation area is also preserved. The impact upon the neighbouring occupiers has been carefully considered by your officers. The proposed dwelling is set behind the large shared boundary wall and therefore will not result in any harm to the property to the south. The closest property, in fact, is a former chapel and not in residential use. The dwelling is set a sufficient distance from the garden number 18 to the north, so there'll be no significant overlooking to this property's garden. The access will be enhanced to provide the requisite visibility displays. Any increase in vehicular movements will be small. Adequate parking and turning facilities will be provided on site. The council's highway officer raises no objections to development. The scheme has been informed by the findings of the ecology surveys. The mitigation, which includes dark corridors to protect bats and habitat land, will be delivered on site. This is supported by the council's ecologist. The site slopes from south to north away from the road and neighbouring dwellings, and the area is not designated as an area of flood risk. A strategy for surface water and foul water drainage will ensure that the development does not result in any increase in flood risk. We hope you can support this application in line with your officer recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Tessa. Cheers. So we go on now to members. Adam, unfortunately, is not here today, but Dawn is. So, Dawn, your turn.
Thank you. Christina and Edmund lived in Beckington for over 25 years, and when they got too old to stay in their home and look after their garden, they had to downsize outside of the village. And there's loads and loads of examples of people who cannot stay in the village where they lived, where they worked, maybe where they moved to find what we find in villages, things like community, architectural pleasing buildings. And I think, even as Mr. Backhouse said, and the parish council have said in the past, that they would really approve that something is built on the site. But the problem is that it's too big. And I think that if we can provide homes for people to stay in their communities, so downsizing and remain in their communities where their friends and their church community or whatever it is that they are connected to can remain, that would be optimal. I think that we should be considering the big houses, the family houses in the new developments. But when we're taking infills like this, we need to consider architecture, but also the size of the houses so that people can remain in their villages. I also am really in support of the parish council in their in the way that they've seen this planning application. But I also do understand that there are people who want to build their ideal perfect home in the village that they really, really like. I'm also in favour of the development using, the materials that are relevant to the area and all the architectural, the modern architecture. Because I also think that if we go for modern architecture, it has to have its place. But also we need to, like if you go to the, any cathedral, you can see, different eras on a cathedral. So we want to also be able to have different eras of architecture in our communities because that's important to our history and our heritage. So for me, as much as, the parish council have not approved this, are not in support of this. I generally like to go with what the parish council says because they live in the area. But yeah, so that's kind of where I am at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Dawn, for that. Unfortunately, I don't have any recommendations or opinions from Adam on this one. So we'll go out to the wider committee, and who would like to start? Susie.
I'm just quite confused because the gentleman who spoke to us over Zoom described something quite dramatically different from what I feel I'm hearing from the officers, and I just feel completely confused by that. So I don't know if we can get some kind of clarity or why there hasn't been a visit to this family's garden to see whether why would he's not going to waste his time, come and sit here and lie to us. So I don't understand.
Okay. Excuse me. Jennifer, could you make a reply, please?
Yeah, I'm just going to bring up a slide that will hopefully...
He's got to stop sharing.
Is it not coming up? Sorry, I'm pressing present and nothing's happening, so I'm not sure what's going on. It'd be easier to show you with a slide if we can get one up. Oh, hang on, I think I may have found the issue. Okay, I think I've managed to fix it. Right, so to explain how our reasoning on this one, so the proposal site is here where my cursor is, and admittedly there is a lot of glazing that will be facing north. This is the part of the garden that the neighbour is saying will be overlooked by the development. But just to highlight that the house associated with this garden is here, number 18. So there is a significant degree of garden immediately to the rear of this property, which wouldn't be impacted by this proposal. It's this extended part of the garden which could possibly be impacted, but because of the size of the garden itself, we consider the primary amenity space is generally to the rear of the house, and that would remain unimpacted by the proposal. In addition, there is an ample planting along this existing planting along this rear boundary, which would further screen any overlooking, which is proposed to be retained as part of a wildlife area on the sites. Thank you.
I feel like it's unfair to say, you know, that's like, it looks to me like less than 20% of his garden is directly behind his house, and the vast majority of his garden is going to be right next door to this building. So it will obviously impact their use of their garden. So I just, yeah, I don't think it's great, really, that situation.
Okay, thanks for that, Sue. I'd just like to mention something. Claire, you will be able to vote, even though you popped out for a minute, okay? We've just decided on that, but it's usually if people go out of the room or something's being discussed, you can't vote. But that was just a recap, so it's fine. Okay, who's next, please? Barry.
Could we hear from the officer what the conservation officer's comments might be? Because it looks like this is a box dumped in the middle of quite a nice lot of listed buildings. And I thought you could only do that sort of thing if it had outstanding architectural merit, which I don't think, that looking at the pictures that we've seen so far, you can't claim that for this application.
Yep, no problem. I've got the report here. So the conservation officer, so originally there were a few concerns raised regarding the impact on the setting of the Baptist church, and the view that, so looking at these pictures that are on the screen, if I go back to my presentation, this building here is the Baptist church. Originally concerns were raised regarding the second story of the dwelling and the impact that it would have on its setting. However, the applicant has since reduced the size of this second story, which has removed its visual impact when viewed from Froome Road, especially this offshoot of Froome Road itself, when viewed from almost where my cursor is down here, looking beyond these dwellings at the front towards the Baptist church, to make sure that you can't see this proposal within the same setting as the Baptist church itself. So since reducing the scale of the second story, first floor, I guess, not a second story, then that harm has been removed in the views of the conservation officer. Otherwise, they didn't have any concerns.
Okay, who else would like to comment? Dawn, you'd like to come back?
Yeah, I'm just really concerned that it's such it's a heritage area, and I'm really concerned about the impact of a building that, for me, just doesn't seem to conform and sit within the conservation area. Yeah, that's something that really is a bit of a struggle for me.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. Benty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a time as I was here that I thought I should never, ever come across Beckington again after all the plans and houses that was made for Beckington that almost destroyed it. And it was only some houses. So I thought I never, ever, ever should see anything that would make people in Beckington unhappy. But this here, listed building consent, housing, conservation area are there for a reason. They are there to protect things from even a remote house that are not part of it. In my point of view, I can understand how frustrating it must be for the neighbors to this here, to all of a sudden, there are wildlife that will never come back again once you start interfering with them. So in my point of view, I do not agree with it. And and I can understand that people want to stay in their area where they lived all their life, but there must be other ways than creating a monstrosity like that. And in my point of view, it is. But in my point of view, and therefore I do not like it at all, and I wish I would never have seen it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Benty.
Can Simon please comment?
Yeah, Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, members, obviously, Councillor Denton, sorry, it was Councillor Clark asked case officer what your conservation officer thinks about the proposal. So you've heard that your technical consultee, in terms of assessing the impact of this proposal on the heritage assets that are affected by it, i.e. the conservation area and the associated listed buildings, they don't identify any significant harm. And I just wanted to share that with you because it's important, because of our 5-year land supply position. If you are going to recommend contrary to the officer recommendation, you have got to identify significant and demonstrable harm. And unlike applications where houses are proposed outside a settlement boundary, this site is actually within the settlement boundary. And again, just is it worth, Jenny, just showing that photograph just so members are clear about the relationship with the neighbouring property at number 18 and the scope of the garden? Because again, I think that's obviously a concern for some of you. I think you need to be certain that you're just clear on the relationship. So I think it's the photograph that sits with the site plan, the aerial, that again, I think if you show that first for members so they can clearly understand the relationship.
These photos show the trees that are there at the moment. So some of the screening, the neighbour's garden would lie beyond those trees in the right-hand photo. I think it's fields that you can see above, but the neighbour's garden would be below that field. You can possibly see a bit of lighter grass around here. I believe that would be the neighbour's garden that was referred to in terms of the aerial photo.
So I just wanted you all to be clear, members. So the photograph on the right, as Jen has just referred to you, the lighter shading of the grass, so where Jenny's cursor is, that's the scope of the neighbour's garden that would effectively be adjacent to where the residential dwelling is proposed. And you can obviously see where the principal dwelling is and the part of the neighbour's garden closest to the dwelling. So again, in your deliberations, just want you to be clear as to that relationship with the neighbouring garden.
Thank you, Simon. I think everybody took that on board. Yeah. Good. Okay. We don't have anybody else who wishes to speak on this one, I don't believe. But we don't have any proposals on the table. So who is going to propose one way or the other, please?
Well, I could. Pardon? Yeah. Okay, there we go. Better. So, lots of people in the village have, obviously these kinds of conversations happen a lot, and people are really quite, a lot of people have said, we're happy for something to go on there, but we're just concerned about the size of it and the fact that it can be seen, and it's, the concern for the neighbours. And I mean, for me, I would think that a bungalow would be the best option on that land, simply because it's not 2 stories, and it will help reduce all of the impact that people have been speaking about, the light and the views and everything else. And I know light isn't one of the considerations, but I'm happy to propose going against officer recommendation, because I just think it's too big, it's out of character, and because the community the neighbours aren't happy with it, and the parish council have turned it down as well, and they live in the community. So yeah, I'd like to. Yeah.
Okay, so you're proposing that we go against officer recommendation. Do you have a seconder? Benty is seconding you. Okay, we will move to a vote. Yes, Simon?
So you have identified that the size, the style and the design of the proposal is considered to be detrimental to the amenity of the occupiers of the neighbouring garden, and I'm assuming we're talking about number 18.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then you're also identifying that the overall size, style and design is considered to be detrimental to the character appearance of the conservation area. And do you also identify harm to the setting of listed buildings or?
Yep, I
Yeah.
think that would be good. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that you're considering those combined, those two levels of harm are significant and demonstrable.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I feel like I'm getting married. I do.
Okay, thank you for that, Simon. Dawn, Mick has signalled that he'd like to come back into the conversation. So, yeah.
I never started, but thank you, Chair.
Makes a change.
Yes, it does. I just like to point out that the southwest corner of this building is less than 5 metres away from the, is it a chapel? Whichever denomination chapel it is. And I think that's very close to a listed building, to be honest. Regardless of whether it's slightly down the slope, I think it's going to be hard to ignore that. I don't see that as being a good thing. And I think that in the mix, the fact that it's, although it is a house and we need houses, I think in this instance, they've got it wrong and tried to be too large again, I suppose. And I think I have to agree with Councillor Denton that a bungalow would be more suitable, or at least a single-storey building in that situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody else wishes to make a comment before we go to a vote? Thank you. No? Okay. So we will go to the vote on this one. And I believe, Dawn, would you like to remind us of your?
No.
No.
I'd like to go against officer recommendation of approval for the reasons as stated by Mr. Trafford.
Thank you. That's absolutely fine. So all those in favour of Dawn's motion, please show their hands. Two, 6, 7, I think. All those against? Four. Okay, so that motion is carried. Thank you. Oh yeah, do we have any abstentions? No, we do. Rob. Okay, and Claire. Okay.
10-4-2.
10-4-2, yeah. Okay, brilliant. Right, so we move on to agenda item 9, which, Jennifer, this is you again. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the other application on the adjoining site. So this proposal was for the demolition of the existing dwelling at 22 Froome Road. Oh, sorry. I think it was user error that time. No, it's not.
It's come up. Use your arrows rather than.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Should work better.
Okay, sorry about that. So this proposal is for the demolition of the existing dwelling and outbuildings and the erection of 2 dwellings. So again, this is the adjoining site, so it's within the development limits of Beckington. It's circled by the yellow circle. Apologies, I skipped through a few slides then. Okay, so as you can see, the red line is around the adjoining site to the one just considered. This is adjacent to Froome Road itself. There's an existing dwelling on the site, number 22, that's proposed for demolition to accommodate the 2 dwellings. Again, aerial view of the site. So existing proposed site plans, the access for these 2 dwellings will be the same as the proposed access for the previous application just discussed. It will come directly from Froome Road, run down the side of the dwellings between those and number 24 Froome Road. It's a pair of semi-detached with a detached double garage to the rear, which will be shared between the 2 properties. This is a slightly more zoomed in site plan, so you can see the detail. The red dashed line is the existing dwelling to be demolished. This also shows the visibility displays onto the highway, the access which has sufficient width for cars to both enter and exit at the same time, and sufficient parking to the rear. Those the elevations of the existing dwelling, as seen on the previous application on the slides. It's a kind of 1960s, 70s chateau type dwelling. The proposed floor plan, so it's 3 stories. However, when viewed from Froome Road itself, it will appear as a 2-story dwelling with accommodation in the roof space. So each dwelling is proposed to be 4 beds. And the proposed elevations,
excuse me,
much more traditional in style than the previous dwelling. So the southeast elevation in the top left corner will be the elevation facing the road. So existing and proposed sections. So you see the existing sections at the bottom. So that's the existing dwelling to be demolished and the proposed dwelling at the top. And these are how the proposals will sit within the street scene. The top image is from the road side itself. So as you see, the roof heights are a staggered approach to what's there already, slightly higher and then slightly lower than the properties to the left. The proposed garage, simple detached garage. Okay, and photos of the site. Many of these are similar to what you've already seen. So that's obviously the chateau style dwelling that's going to be demolished. The conservation officer had no concerns about that being removed. In fact, they considered it to be an enhancement to the street scene, given that it's not in keeping with the buildings nearby. This shows the visibility displays from the proposed access. Again, these are photos that you've seen previously. So this will be looking towards number 24 to the west. And this is looking back to the rear of number 22, which is to be demolished. Again, the photo on the right is the rear of the property and shows the neighbouring properties just beyond. And pictures of the wider site. So these are the trees that are to be retained along the northern boundary and will form part of the wildlife area. And this was recommended for approval as per the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so we've got a few speakers here. First one is Ben Richards, please. Thank you. Ben, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the meeting. I live at number 20 Froome Road, a Grade 2 listed building inside the conservation area, immediately neighbouring the proposed development. And I objected to the application with particular concerns about overshadowing and overlooking. We all agree, well, most of us agree, that the existing building needs to be demolished. It's the scale of the proposed new properties and how they affect what is part of the historic centre of the village that causes us concern. And we would welcome, therefore, a smaller development that does not impact on the nearby 8 listed buildings, the rear setting of neighbours, and fits better into the conservation area. I see that the pack for today states that following comments from the conservation officer, the 2 dwellings have been set back slightly from the front building line to add further distinction between the historic dwellings and the proposed, and to maintain a straight line between ridge heights. I know that previous comment from another application in 2021 from the conservation was that proposed new dwellings should actually be sited hard against the pavement edge and not set back from the road. And this obviously is now different. And I wonder if it's mainly because the proposed development is so large that there is a need to set it back from the road to achieve a straight line between the ridge heights of the neighbouring properties. And my thinking is that perhaps smaller dwellings not set back from the road would be a perfect fit. They would achieve a natural line, would not appear to be dominant, and would avoid harm to the listed buildings. And I know that you'll hear more about the size and impact. The other point I wanted to make is I think you may also be aware that of the issues Beckington has faced concerning sewerage and drains capacity. I note that the briefing pack states, as the existing property at number 22 is already connected to the network, the impact of connecting a further 2 properties would not be significant. As that property has been empty for many years, and nothing has presumably been going down the drains, I'm not sure of the logic of this argument, and I'd be very keen to know what expert investigation has taken place to determine that the existing infrastructure would be able to cope given the problems that have been in the past. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Okay, we have Charlotte Richards next, please. And you also have 3 minutes, Charlotte.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to speak today. I am the wife of Ben, so obviously living in the same house, and I'm strongly objecting to the application by the property developer on the grounds of oppressiveness, loss of light, loss of privacy, noise, and disruption to the setting. Our house is 1/2 metre below the road at the front, which is not visible on the plans. We are a split level house, which means that we're 1.5 metres lower at the back of the house. This is also not shown on the plans. The existing house at number 22 is already 1 storey higher than ours at the back. And our neighbours on the other side, number 18, Richard Backhouse that you heard from, are also taller than us. And therefore, replacing the current 3-bedroomed house with an 8 to 10 bedroomed 3-storey property will be oppressive, detrimental, and give us the sense of being in a dark tunnel. The current conservation officer has not visited the site, and requests from us to look at the site from our side have not been upheld, leading us to believe that giving special attention to a listed building and its setting have not occurred. As a result, the conservation officer has missed the floor-to-ceiling side windows that looks directly towards our patio and upstairs windows, after claiming all obscured windows look to the bottom of the garden. The revised plans show that the glazed family room at the rear of the property extends beyond the rear of our house, and the use of sliding slatted shutters only affords privacy to the development, but not to us. We rely on natural sunlight as our house is northwest facing, and being listed, we are not allowed to have double glazing. It is noisy with traffic at the front and peaceful at the rear. We normally get sun from the rear from 1 p.m. onwards, and with the position and scale of the development, we would lose the sun until very late afternoon, making our patio almost useless. This would be far worse in the winter when the sun is lower. The provision to park 6 to 7 vehicles with the planning proposal, plus delivery drivers in the garden, means that they all have to turn around to exit, shining lights on the rear of 7 houses, ruining any peaceful use of our gardens. The site is not an eyesore, as conservation has suggested, but it is overgrown at the bottom end, and the garden was only at the bottom end of the garden, and it was only boarded up 3 weeks ago. 2 smaller and desirable 3-bedroomed houses with garden space and parking where the single house application would have been cited would sort this out. There is no need for such enormous properties dominating and overbearing existing homes when they could be scaled back to allow everyone to enjoy the space and peacefully and retain the beautiful conservation area. The agent has said that it was using local materials, which isn't true. It would be a grey Purbeck stone from Dorset, not Somerset. The development has already started with foundations for walls, and there has been no regard for protected species of wildlife. We request that this application is refused, but welcome another application on a smaller scale. And I thank you very much for hearing my views. And I didn't cry.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you made it inside the 3 minutes, which is even better. Okay, next we have the same parish councillor as before, Rory Ingleby Mackenzie, please. And you have another 3 minutes, Rory.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again for the opportunity to bring this to the Planning Committee. The Parish Council is not opposed to a suitable development to replace the current ugly and totally inappropriate 1960s or 70s chalet-style house at 22 Froome Road. However, it is the Council's opinion that the proposed building is too tall, effectively being a 3-storey design, out of keeping with its neighbours and inappropriate for the Beckington Conservation Area. The proposed development is overbearing, the footprint being considerably larger than the original single detached house. The accommodation would provide 2 4-bedroom units, replacing 1 3-bedroom house, with garaging and parking spaces for 6 vehicles. There is concern about the increased number of vehicles which could use the site, a considerable increase on the previous 1 or 2. The height of the proposed development is greater than the neighbouring houses on the north-east side, and this would allow considerable overlooking and consequent lack of privacy, especially of the gardens at numbers 20 and 18 Froome Road. In particular, the proposed family rooms at the rear, especially of the proposed unit neighbouring number 20 Froome Road, overlooks the gardens of numbers 18 and 20 Froome Road. Loss of light is another consequence of the height and proximity of the neighbouring property. The proposed development sits in the Beckington Conservation Area and as such does not reflect the village vernacular. It follows the modern townhouse design with 2 stories and a large expansive roof housing a 3rd story. These townhouses are better suited to a town than a rural village with 2-story houses. Those approaching the village down the Froome Road will see a large expansive roof out of keeping with neighbouring properties. The architect has made minor adjustments to the initial plan, including removing roof lights on the northeast and the southeast elevations. The houses are now slightly set back from the pavement with the ground floor lower to below pavement level, as per the neighbouring house number 20. But without scale drawings with measurements, it is hard to tell exactly how high the roof line will be. But clearly the adjustments will not make a material difference to the height of the 3-storey building when compared to its neighbour at number 20. As you've heard already, there are a number of neighbouring listed buildings that will be impacted by the proposed development. Numbers 20, 24 and 26 Froome Road, the Haven and the Baptist Chapel are all Grade 2 listed, and the Abbey opposite is Grade 2 starred. The proposed 2 new houses would in addition block the view of the open countryside landscape to the north for those driving, cycling or walking into Beckington on the Froome Road, which at this junction is part of the Macmillan Way, a nationally recognised long-distance footpath that links Boston in Lincolnshire to Abbotsbury in Dorset. There are concerns, as you already heard, about surface water runoff from Froome Road and major concerns about sewage disposal. Beckington has a long-standing and well-documented sewerage problem, and this proposed development can only make matters worse, especially at a time of climate emergency. Beckington Parish Council respectfully requests the Planning Commission turn down this application in its current form. Thank you.
And thank you, Rory. Cheers. Okay, so we're going to go now to Tessa.
Thank you, Chair.
As per the previous application, the application site is within the housing development boundary of Beckington. The principle of development is therefore acceptable and in accordance with the strategic policies. Significant weight should be given to this and the need to boost housing land supply, particularly in a sustainable location such as this. The dwelling to be demolished is identified in the Beckington Conservation Area appraisal as a negative building. It sits in a large plot and has been vacant for several years. The development provides the opportunity to enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area. Whilst the two dwellings proposed occupy a larger footprint and a greater scale than the dwelling they replace, the size of the site allows for this increased footprint and scale. The replacement dwellings are high quality and more in keeping with the local area than the existing building, replicating features of neighbouring buildings and using local materials to match the hues of the neighbouring buildings. The buildings are sited to allow for the retention of views through to the countryside. Each dwelling will have a good-sized garden commensurate with the size of the dwelling and appropriate for this village context. The height of the buildings sit below the neighbours to the west, following the topography of the road, and the Conservation Officer raises no objections to this development. The impact upon the neighbours has been carefully considered by the case officer. There will be no significant loss of privacy due to the majority of the windows being sited on the front and rear of the dwellings. Those to the rear would not result in any material loss of privacy due to the oblique angle of sight from these windows alongside the overlooking already experienced by existing properties. The noise and disturbance will not increase significantly with only one additional property. Compared to the existing, the dwellings will be set further away from the neighbouring dwellings to the east and due to the appropriate scale and siting will not result in an overbearing impact or reverse loss of light. Whilst it will change how the neighbours experience the site, this does not necessarily equate to harm. As per the previous application, the access will be enhanced so that it allows for requisite visibility displays. The increase in vehicle movements will be small, adequate car parking and turning facilities will be provided on site, and the Council's Highway Officer supports the application. Ecology surveys have been undertaken and have informed the development. The mitigation, including dark areas and habitat land, are being provided on site, and this is supported by the Council's ecologist. The site slopes from south to north away from the road and neighbouring dwellings, and the area is not designated as an area of flood risk. A strategy for surface water and foul water drainage will ensure the development does not increase flood risk. Wessex Water have recently updated the sewage systems and drainage systems in the site. We hope you can support this application in line with your officer recommendation. Thank you.
And thank you, Tessa. Cheers. Okay, so that's all of our public speakers. So it's back to you, Dawn.
Thank you. As with the previous, I think it's way too big. I'm in favour of the demolition of the building there, and I think so is everybody else. But something that's more sympathetic to the community, to the conservation area, to using materials that are more local. And I think everyone would be happy with that. But again, it just is so big. And yeah, I think the neighbours' concerns are quite valid. And those are what the parish council has said as well. I'm just looking at the highways officers, well, the report from the highways officer. I do think that there is a problem in that area specifically because of the school, and there's already a huge problem with drop-off pickup, and the site where the school is, in their S106 agreement, they were supposed to be parking on site, and they're not doing that. So there's already a problem there with the staff parking all over the village to be able to get to the school. And yeah, I think that the traffic is the problem as well. So those are my thoughts at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. I tend to agree about traffic in Beckington. I went there recently for obvious reasons. And yeah, I think, but I wasn't at the school time, so I couldn't really tell. Okay, so we're going to go to the rest of the committee. Martin, you've got your hand up straight away.
I did, Mr. Chairman, and I sympathise with the public speakers. I've often felt like bursting into tears in one of these planning meetings. But in this particular instance, I think there's some contradictions going on. We have a house on that site. People don't like the look of it very much. I can understand that. And a lot of people that are complaining are saying, well, they actually don't mind it being built on. And that sort of, as long as it's the right kind of dwelling. And that sort of contradicts the argument about the sewage and about the light. However, I think the point has been made very well, and inevitably a developer wants to get as much profit out of a site as they possibly can. But I tend to agree with what Dawn's saying, which I'm sure will shock her, in as much as I think that that this is a case, as was the last one, of overdevelopment. I do know the road, I do know the area reasonably well, and I think we have to be pretty sensitive in the way we allow this to be developed. So overdevelopment, I would turn it down on that basis, but not in the principle of building something on it.
Thank you, Martin. Well appreciated. Rob.
Quick question, Chair, if I can. I see on the relevant history, there is an application for a single dwelling on this site. Can we tell us if that is still valid? Still going through?
That's the application we just discussed before this one, I think.
Yeah, we've just done that one, Rob. That's okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, isn't there one in previous history? I think that's what he's talking about.
Oh, you want previous history, yeah?
There's another application looking through the minutes, the notes we have. 2015.
Yeah, there is one from 2015 and 2019. They were both withdrawn though, so they weren't determined. That's the one we just discussed.
Yeah, that's what we've just done. Okay. Right, moving on. Susie, I think you're next. No, or Mick is next. Mick had his hand up first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, Susie. It's just, I'm afraid I'm going to go for the design of these because I've just done a street scene walk along that area and they haven't got it right. I think if they'd done something which I know they shouldn't do a pastiche. The trouble is they haven't got the spirit of Beckington in this particular area, which is not quite Weaver's Cottage, but the second floor is slightly reduced in height. And that gives you a lower house, and the roof angle and all that. These just don't fit in. And I know they will age and mellow over time, but I think again they just need to be sensible about the size of what they're building there and the street scene. So I would go on refusal on that they aren't appropriate to the street scene in Beckington at that particular point. Bearing in mind it's a conservation area, I assume. Yes, thank you.
Right, thanks, Mick. Susie?
I mean, I'm just going to say more of the same, and partly I don't want to waste people's time by saying more of the same, but I think maybe if I say more of the same, the message will hit home. You know, we know the village. Yes, that particular existing dwelling is unattractive. Yes, it would be nice to replace it, but this is way too big. It's too much. Sorry for the repetition, but, you know, I feel like the message really needs to hit home.
No, thank you for that, Susie. You're entitled to your view. Who have we got next? Barry?
Thank you, Chair. It does seem that these properties take up an awful lot of this site without much thought to other amenities that they might like. By the time they've got the conservatory and their sheds and this and that all over the place, doesn't leave much room for growing your own food, which I think we should be thinking of if we're talking about sustainability. I didn't realise we were local to Purbeck. Purbeck Stone is local. That does surprise me. And I noticed somebody said it's already started without planning permission.
I wouldn't take too much.
Well, somebody said it in their submission. The foundations are in. Anyway, that's probably an issue for the planning officers to do something about. But the overriding thing is...
Yeah, that's not something we should be concerned about, I don't think.
Shouldn't we? Well,
not in deciding this application.
Okay, all right. Well, somebody should be concerned about it. Okay. But this area, Beckington, it's got a character. And although these buildings fit all the policies that you can name and you can think of and everybody's happy with it, you're putting something into the area that's not of the area. You're changing the character of the area. And these smaller cottages or houses, call them what you will, this is not the place for 4-bedroom houses. 2-bedroom houses might be good, more chance of selling them, more people in the area could buy them. 2-3 bedrooms, 2-4s, it's getting a bit silly, isn't it? I think I'm very uncomfortable with it. And if the conservation officer has come up with this and said, I don't have any problems with it, I do worry about the conservation officer's comments, with great respect to the conservation officer.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Anybody else like to make a comment? Simon?
Yeah, just this Simon. As I said, in soap operas, they wouldn't allow two Simon. But anyway, I'm going to play devil's advocate, I'm afraid. The existing property is an eyesore, a carbuncle, or whatever you want to call it, and it's not in keeping with the other properties. So I think that argument that it's not in keeping with the other properties doesn't really apply to the new properties, which are more in keeping. They may not be perfect, but they're more in keeping. So I would have have to have very good reasons to go against officer recommendation.
Thank you, Simon. Anyone else?
Simon Travis, please.
Oh, yeah, Simon here, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, again, you've obviously debated and discussed. You've highlighted overdevelopment. You've highlighted impact on street scene. You've highlighted the palette of materials. So I think largely you're giving the impression that you think that the scale siting and design is unacceptable in terms of the impact that it has on the amenities of the neighbouring property, and also with respect to how it impacts the character appearance of the conservation area and the setting of the neighbouring listed buildings. And that's okay, you're quite entitled to do that. What I do worry about is when you start to question negatively the views that your technical officers have given you, because again, you don't have to agree. You're quite entitled to disagree, but it should really be left at that, and we don't really need to start to question whether or not officers are qualified to do the jobs that they're employed to do. So I'd just like to make that comment, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. And I definitely agree with what you've just said. And I think members should take that on board. Okay, thank you. Dawn?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about the building that's already there that isn't great. The idea is that we want to do something better. And so we don't really want to compare the fact that it's already rubbish and that the one we're going to create is better. We want to do better than that. We want to make this village a place that people are proud of, and for the neighbours who have lived there for all these years. So I think, yeah, for me, it doesn't really matter what's there. If it's got to go, it's got to go. But we want to do something better on that site. And I think everybody wants to have something better there. So just wanted to make that point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's Mick. I can hardly see you where you're sat to because no, it's the window behind you. Okay.
Not the halo.
Well, I don't know if you got one of those.
Chair, I'd like to propose a motion that we turn this down against officer recommendation on the reasons stated by our fine officer, Simon Trafford. And I think he summed it up very well. I just think I think I need a seconder for a start.
Think you have a seconder?
Do I?
Okay, so that's Dawn.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, so we have a proposer and we have a seconder. Before we go to a vote, do we have any more or any more? I'm looking, Susie.
I was going to suggest that we ask the developer to come back in a couple of months with a better proposition than this one. But you've already got a proposal on the table, so I don't know how you feel about that.
No, that's really up to them if they want to come back with a new development, a new application. Okay.
No, I'm suggesting we.
Oh, you
defer
want,
the
you want to
decision.
defer again?
Let's just defer the decision, come back with something more appropriate, given all the
Oh,
conversations that
I
have been
can't
heard around the
support
room.
you on that one, I'm afraid. You'll have to
don't
get somebody else
necessarily
to
have
support you. No.
I'm just kind of trying to work on the basis that refusals are failures, but that, you know, all the opinions that have been heard around the room are that we want to put something there, but not this. So that's why I'm making that suggestion.
No, you're entitled to make
Okay,
the
the
suggestion,
majority.
but I think the developer will, if they aren't granted permission, will come back with something else. Okay, unless there is somebody who wishes to second Susie's. No. Okay. Okay, let's go to the vote then. And all those in favour of, I can't remember what the applicant.
Refusal against.
Yeah, refusal. Mick, read out what you said.
Thank you. Do you have it there? Thank you, because my memory is terrible.
Yeah, so members, effectively, you have considered that the development results in significant and demonstrable harm in terms of it representing overdevelopment of the site and the impact that it has because of the unacceptable scale, siting and design on the amenities of the neighbouring property. I think you identified number 20 as the key property that was affected. And in terms of, for those same reasons, overdevelopment, unacceptable scale, siting and design, and the impact that it has on the street scene, and also on the conservation area catchment appearance and the setting of the listed building.
Right, brilliant. Everybody take that on board? And okay, so all those in favour of Mick and Dawn's motion, please put your hands in the air. Okay. Right, that's 7. All those against? You got that one, Leslie? 3.
3.
And abstentions?
3.
3.
3, 6, 7, yeah, 13. Yeah.
Okay, so I believe that's the end of our meeting concerning planning applications.